was reading this lovely book. I love it. I deleted the Facebook app because I'm spending too much time on it, caring about things that aren't actually helping my current situation. There's a balance between those things, right? So I'm like, okay. But I love both of them equally. It's hard to get rid of. It's hard to get rid of sharing what I know that I think would benefit others and not sharing it. But I love this book. And I was thinking, I was lucky. I grew up knowing about AA meetings, and I grew up knowing about addiction, and I got to see it. And then I went through a 5-year period of an addiction, and now I've got 6 years sober out of that addiction. And I've even been around a bunch of addicted people still, and I've done the work. And I know the difference of what I should go around and what I shouldn't. I know what can consume me and what can't, for the most part. And that even goes with like social media. What can consume you and what can't, you know? Dreams can consume you, but then sometimes pay out. It's a fine dance. But I've been like preaching about, what's going on. And it always comes back to this. Like, we need to take care of Earth where we live. And the people don't necessarily have that same goal in mind. And if you don't keep up, you don't get to go. You're not going to have fun where we're going. High-tech vision, per se. Not even necessarily off planet, just they're taking this planet somewhere where we don't want it to go. Most of us. Can you imagine growing a baby like Tech and then wanting to keep it alive? Those are big mama and papa bears, making sure they're a little baby. But our baby, all of our babies, is still, no one can deny that, Mother Earth. And if people have spaceships, then that's why they don't care. And that's a shame. Is that the truth? We don't know. But I would like to speak about a little bit of truth that I do know. I do know that while on drugs, you lose the connection. I mean, you can learn how to be connected while on drugs, but you lose that connection. You lose the desire to be connected to people, to connected to nature, and you become consumed into whatever you're doing, which literally would have no meaning to anybody else but you. As a whole, how does that participate in life? It doesn't. When I see people and hear people in recovery of all ages, I hear the horrible things that these addictions took them places to. And our Earth has those places, yes. And those drugs forced you into those places due to what it does to your focus of brain. Hence, everyone will say, you brought yourself there. Things that consume you are forces that people can't deal with themselves. These were forces bigger than us for the most part, until we're trained to deal with them. And most of the time we're not trained to deal with them. So it's by design. And I think what I just said spoke for itself. But what I find true in me and true in what I hear from everybody else is when you lose the connection, you get it back. Like if you lost your soul and you get your soul back. Like after a war, you realize, wow, did we really have to hurt all those people? Because now I can't live with myself. We see these things time and time again. And what I always see, even in like iRobot and stuff, even iRobot is like, tech isn't it, nature's it. Isolation isn't it, family is it. Not necessarily community, but just at least some type of connection. If you've made a family, that's cool. Does that family go against everybody else? That shouldn't be happening. That's why groups should be able to come together and work together. But everybody realizes, like, when you are taken away from your soul and things that you love and you come back, you realize you love those things. And you realize that it takes effort to appreciate and love those things. It doesn't come naturally, which is why you thought maybe that wasn't it, because you're thinking it's supposed to come natural. Like when a seed grows, you think that's natural, but you ever ask the seed how hard that was? So they teach us that, like, things like that are hard. Or they don't teach us things like that are hard. But that's the one that you work at. That's worth it in the end. All around. Going to war is hard. And they say it's worth it. But you'll see. Most people disagree. When you work through love and you have patience and understanding and communication and timelines, that's a love where everybody participates. Everybody gets to be a part of it and decide and be happy. And that happens when everybody's equal. If we have unequal people voting for things, you're going to have an unequal outcome. Which is kind of why they maybe in 50,000 million years like, do they say our goal is for us to all be the same or get along? And do they show us how that's achievable? I'm not sure if they're showing the big picture yet. And I'd like us to ask why. Because when we want to know if the big picture was where we all want to go, maybe they don't want us to vote because it's not going to be, once we get there, there's not going to be a choice. And I think a lot of people feel like we're already there. But anyways, a lot of people, when they come out of isolation, they realize, I don't want my kid to be gone during age 5 to 18 at a school with kids that we don't know and teachers we don't know, learning things we don't know. There's great benefit in that, but is that the way we wanted to do it? No. Do parents want to be at the schools with the kids? They're like, well, then be a teacher. So that doesn't really work when the world is scary and schools aren't safe and they put students in front of the door instead of the students. You know, people are going to start seeing, you know, the moment they put the teacher from the front of the classroom where they used to be by the door to the back, and then they put my kid to be the very front person at the door after all those shootings, I said, I don't like your school anymore. I can't consciously go to school knowing that people could have targets on their back due to gangs and drugs and personal family life issues, and school's a safe, easy place to get to these kids. I wouldn't want my kid to be there and then to have to tell the students and staffs there. And you know how many times that occurs and why? You know how crime happens? In weird, mysterious ways. In weird, mysterious brains for weird, mysterious things. So schools aren't prepared for that. Shoot, teachers aren't prepared for that. At the time, teachers are saying they don't even like the kids anymore. Of course they're going to move from the front of the classroom to the back and make sure that they are safe. I don't know. Maybe the thinking is, well, we want the teacher to be able to save the rest of the kids. I don't understand what the thinking is on this. Why don't all schools have securities at the gates now? They can't afford it? Well, apparently they could, but they chose not to. You know, so then we get into all that. So I'm glad they're uncovering where our funds are going, because that was a big thing. And now they're like probably distracting us on where those funds are going to go. And they're saying, well, we just got rid of that program, so now those funds are no longer gone. Are they? You know, I don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. That's why I was mentioning we need more parties and more, maybe not even more parties, but like a new party and a new equalization of the parties. Because we know that the people aren't being heard. And we know the way that system is set up right now, the people aren't being heard, and we know it's not our votes being pushed. And that's why I say we need to fix that. That's why I say we needed to have like a group where the people, I don't know. And maybe that's already established, we just weren't using it. And maybe people are teaching us how to use it. And maybe we're getting ourselves in jobs and positions to be able to use these things that require us to take like weeks off to go petition against stuff. I don't know, maybe we're picking this up. I love the fire that was lit. I love it. I love it. You know? Maybe that's what You know, they walk with the eternal flame. I saw Poppy with the eternal flame on Trolls, Poppy's movie. She had the eternal flame in her hand. I watched Fern Gully, and I realized that Fern Gully is the basis of Avatar. That's the whole Avatar movie, is Fern Gully. And it says for our children's, and then they remade Avatar. Maybe they did that because it was in somebody's will that they had to continue that movie on. But now everyone thinks it's a real alien invasion. I don't know if that was an accident or not. Or maybe they're showing us more. I don't know. They really need to explain these movie things. Because if the movies things and saying they're showing things in the movies because that's a whole Posse scheme from the higher ups to get us. Maybe that's a system within a system that gets us to buy and move things and stuff like that. Obviously it is. It's a money-making machine. But how much is it affecting our psyche? And how much do we keep letting it happen? I don't know about all that. But anyways, I do know that this book is amazing. And I love it. It says, welcoming joy into your life. Let me just read, welcoming joy. Okay, so the contents. The little book of positive quotations, compiled and arranged. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of the dream. Eleanor Roosevelt, okay? This is a book of a bunch of positive quotes from a bunch of people throughout our history. And this was given to me by a beautiful person. It was my boyfriend's drug sponsor in AA. Gave it to him. NA. Gave it to him. And I've had, he never looked at it, so I used it. And it's like one of my little Bibles. And every time I open it, I just have to share it with everybody. Because it's like, we have great people out there with great minds. We do. So, it says, welcoming joy into your life. That's the first chapter. This was great for somebody who needed to become sober too. Helping others. Believing in yourself. So there's a bunch of quotes on how to help others. You know, because helping others can be consuming. And how do you do that? There's an art to helping others. Believing in yourself. There's an art to believing in yourself. Exercising self-restraint. There's an art to that. Taking control of your life. There's an art to that. Knowing what really matters. There's an art to that. Accepting responsibility. There's an art to that. Doing the right thing. There's an art to that. Changing the way you look at things. There's an art to that. Taking risks. There's an art to that. Oh, this one I just read. It said, the best place I'd like to be is out on a branch. I just read that earlier. It wasn't quite that, but staying focused on your goals. There's an art to that. Respecting others. There's an art to that. Seizing opportunities. There's an art to that. Working hard. There's an art to that. Learning from mistakes. There's an art to that. Finding and showing courage. There's an art to that. Adjusting to change. There's an art to that. Changing from adversity. There's an art to that. And having vision. There's an art to that. And welcoming joy into your life. There's an art to that. I went through something where everything I enjoyed doing, my environment and people somehow, in some type of way, instilled in me that I wasn't allowed to do anything I enjoyed anymore because it was something. I don't know what happened there. But I found myself realizing that I couldn't do art anymore because people would think this, or because somebody had once said this, and I couldn't do this anymore, and I couldn't sweat anymore because sweating was gross, and I had let what everybody else had said around me become my truth, and I didn't realize it because it was said so truthfully, so by somebody that, oh, it's just so much, and I realized, like, oh, I no longer know how to exist. I no longer know how joy is. I no longer know how to reintroduce that to myself. And then I also realized that I read a bunch of books and I knew myself too, and I was still in there and the books were still in there, and And slowly I rebuild. Slowly I realize I'm allowed to sweat and it's normal. And when people mention I'm sweaty, it puts me into a state of fear to not sweat for a while again until I realize they didn't even mean that. And maybe they didn't mean that back then. That's just what my brain was telling me to do. And why? I don't know. But I read a book called The Mind, Body, and Soul. And it talks about your conscious, unconscious, and subconscious. It's kind of like short-term memory, long-term memory, and permanent memory. And so being present and really attaching all your senses to life in the moment can really create hardcore instilled memories that you can kind of always reach back on if someone's trying to meddle with you. And I think that's also kind of what the Inside Out movie and how sadness will kind of rewrite your joy. I actually experienced that in my life and kind of just explained it. It was an environmental, personal, people combination that did it. It wasn't just me, and it wasn't just them, and it wasn't just the environment. It was all three participating. So careful where you are. Careful who you're with. Or shall I say, don't be careful. Be wise and be mindful. And do things with purpose. And we will leave us with today's June 16th. We'll leave today with our daily devotional. June 16th. Stay on the high road with me. Many voices clamor for your attention, trying to divert you to another path, but I call you to walk ever so closely with me, soaking my presence, living in my peace. This is my unique design for you, planned before the world began. I have called each of my children to a different path, distinctly designed for that one. Do not let anyone convince you that this path is the only right way, and be careful not to exalt your path as superior to another's way. What I require of you is to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with me wherever I lead. I love that.